After 5 years of battling terminal cancer, Hiraku's last flame of life was extinguished, and his soul entered the heavenly realm. Having lived 39 years filled with betrayal and suffering, the god of the world apologized for accidentally giving him such a horrible life. So to make up for his blunder, the god will give him a second life with a healthy body, and promises to grant him any wish. The only thing Hiraku's ever desired was to be reborn as a farmer in a secluded area. Wanting to aid him in his journey, God gave him the most overpowered tool in this universe, the almighty farming tool. With a single tap, his flame burns brightly once more, and Hiraku wakes up in the middle of a forest. As he moves his body for the first time in years, he realizes that this is everything he's ever wished for. And with the almighty farming tool appearing in his hand, he begins using his new body to mend the ground. While cultivating the field, he notices that he never feels tired using the tool. Still, he needed to find a nice area for his farm, so he searched the entire forest until he found a giant tree to call home. There were no rivers or ponds anywhere in the forest, so to quench his thirst, Hiraku decided to dig a well for some water. His almighty farming tool transformed into a shovel, and allowed him to dig deep into the earth until a puddle of water started forming. With a source of water secured, he began clearing the land until he found a tree that was blocking him from cultivating. With the knowledge of his previous life, he tried cutting it down strategically, but with a single slash of his almighty axe, the tree fell down instantly, and he ran before it crushed him. Now that he's gotten his first oak log, he turned it into 4 oak planks using his mallet. After converting all the logs into planks with his crafting table, the sun began setting and he panicked to try and get some fire. But without any firewood, he spent the entire night carving a hole into the giant tree. At first, he thought he could have just built a dirt shack, but remembered that Newton invented gravity in this world, so he didn't want to bury himself alive. The next morning, he gathered firewood and started his first fire to avoid the same mistake. It's been more than a day of clearing all the trees in the distance, but Hiraku hasn't been tired or hungry once. This was the power of his almighty tool, and just as he was about to continue clearing the forest, a monster rabbit rushed towards him, but with his mighty stick, he ended it instantly. While eating the skewers, he feels guilty for ending the rabbit, but wishes he had a hoe to eat the food with. Sorry, I meant he wishes he had a hoe to make food with. After eating the food, it had to come out some way, so Hiraku created an innovative toilet along with shelter for privacy. With everything finally settled, he began cultivating the land and spent the rest of the day wondering what vegetables he should plant first. By the time he was finished, it was already late, so he decided to explore for seeds the next day. But in the morning, the land already had plants sprouting. It made no sense how plants could grow from nothing, and Hiraku thought that this was a side effect from his farming tool. Regardless of how they appeared, he began creating a fence to protect them from the zombies at night, and dug out a mound to keep all the creepers out. The process took a few days, but after finally finishing the perimeter, Hiraku noticed the plants have been growing at an incredible speed. With all the spare wood, he decided to create a small log house and used his carpenting skills to create a nice roof, increasing his civilization level. After a few more days of expanding his farm, Hiraku saw a couple of wolves who were very injured, so he tried bringing them inside. With the leftover meat from the giant boar he defeated, Hiraku fed them, but noticed one of them was pregnant. As a child, his sole wish was to have a dog, so he wished for them to keep him company. But the female started going into labor, trying to give them protection. He brought them into the log house and created a fire to keep them warm when the sun set. After a long sleepless night, Hiraku came to see 4 little puppies feeding. To celebrate her healthy birth, he gave them the tastiest meat he'd gathered. A while passed and the dogs stuck around inside his hut, so Hiraku decided to build a new house right next to them. By the time the puppies started running around, his plants were ready for harvest, and he noticed that tomatoes were the first ones to finally produce fruit. He offered some of them to his dogs, and named the male Kuro, and the female Yuki. After a few weeks, Hiraku learned all the secrets behind his almighty farming tool. While thinking about potatoes, the almighty tool planted potato seeds through magic, so he used this trick to create all the foods he's ever wanted. And on top of that, anything he grew with his almighty tool would grow much faster than it normally would. Grateful for the fact that the gods gave him such an overpowered item, Hiraku created 2 statues to commemorate them. That afternoon, he realized that his diet was getting very repetitive, so he decided to begin planting some trees. They may take years to start producing fruit, but the wait will be worth it. As weeks passed, the wolves started growing horns, and they had found a waterfall 30 minutes away. Although creating a canal would make obtaining fresh water much easier, the distance he would have to dig was too long, so he decided to focus on his base for the time being. The farm was growing steadily, and he had begun adding a variety of plants like wheat and sugarcane to sustain him. But while months of progress passed, Hiraku began losing track of days and the winter was fast approaching. There's no chance he could continue farming in this state, and the pelt from the giant rabbits smelled awful as it began rotting. To prepare for the winter, he began gathering food and firewood, but one day, Kuro brought him over to meet a giant spider. With the silk from its tail, it was able to produce a handkerchief with detailed embroidery. It became the new citizen in his small farm, and produced all the textiles in exchange for some potatoes. Whether he needed a coat for the winter, a bed stuffed with leaves, or curtains to block out the cold wind, the spider, Zabuton, produced everything he ever needed. His small hut was slowly starting to become more civilized, and so winter finally arrived. With the fireplace he had built, he was able to survive the harsh cold nights. Still, regardless of whether he was surviving, he was starting to get awfully lonely, worrying that he would forget how to talk to someone. When the long winter passed and spring finally came, the wolf children had grown and decided to leave the nest. But a few days later, they came back with partners. One of them even beat up a lackey wolf and won the girl over like a gigachat. But they weren't the only ones with surprises, because the spider came back with her own children. All of their families were getting bigger, so Hiraku began farming so he can feed them. But as he farmed, the spider began sounding the alarm. Hiro ran towards the source along with Hiraku, and in the middle of the forest, they found a silver-haired girl crying. All of the animals were apprehensive and she tried asking him for help, so Hiraku approached her. But as he tried to cover her, he fell for her trap, and the girl jumped towards him to take a bite of his neck, transforming into a plot-filled vampire. The wolves attacked her right away and began destroying her, causing her to transform back into her little form. He wondered if she was his enemy, but the girl said the reason she had to suck his blood was to recover her energy before withering away. Feeling bad for how hard his dogs had beaten her up, he offered her a bite of his neck, and she began sucking his she began sucking his blood. She transformed back into a bigger version of herself, but Hiraku remembered her being taller and having more plot, so he told her to hurry the up and suck more of his blood so he can see her giant plot again. After sucking all of his bodily fluid, Hiraku showed her around his farm. It was her first time seeing these abnormal fruits, and when she took a bite of them, she thought they were delicious. He was glad someone was enjoying his food, because for the first time, he'd found a person he could enjoy spending time with in this lonely world. Back at his house, he's realized that today has been full of surprises, and wonders if something like this would ever happen again. Her name was Lululasi, and she asked him if she can come to visit him in the future. But he had a different request, and asked her if she would stay with him here forever. He doesn't want it to be just a one-night stand because her pussy hit different, and Lu thinks that he's trying to propose to her. He doesn't want to let this chance go away and doesn't care if she's a vampire. He doesn't know how many more years he can handle being alone. She tells him that it's just so sudden because she wasn't expecting a marriage proposal, but Hiraku realizes that she misunderstood what he actually meant. After understanding that he was actually proposing, he decided to double down, begging her to marry him. Lu smiles at him, saying that she wants to stay with him forever. He drags her to bed for another one-night stand. The next day, he used the long stick on his hoe to cultivate babies with his new hoe. They sit next to each other and stare at the trees growing, but the spider begins ringing the alarm again. Hiraku runs over and wonders why he's feeling deja vu. He frees the angel girl and thinks that this story is about to get real interesting with all the plot development. Lu tries sneaking away, but the angel girl has finally found her and is ready to come drag her away, so the dogs eat her out.
What do you mean by that?
She's surprised Lu has been hiding inside the forest and is angry that she climaxed after the dogs ate her out. Lu is also angry that she climaxed when the dogs ate her out, and Hiraku wonders why getting injured would lead to them climaxing. The angel girl wonders who this man is, and Lu blushingly introduces him as her husband. While her face burns redder than a tomato, Giant Plot Cannons introduces herself as Tia, and she's come to find Lu because there's a bounty on her head. She was constantly researching different concoctions and kept blowing up the kingdom whenever something didn't go her way. Who reveals this was the reason she was in the middle of the forest on that day, so she bent over the table and asked Tia if she would like to start living here. She promises to show her all of the crops, like Hiraku's eggplant next to their round peaches.
Out of pocket for that shit.
way out of pocket.
Lu goes on to show her around the farm, and Hiraku tries to teach her how to cut cabbage out. After cutting it, he prepared it as a meal and sprinkled some salt on it before handing it to her. She thought it was delicious, and after a long day of farming, they cleaned themselves up using their magical abilities. Inside his house, she tried strawberries for the first time, and Lu told her that they'll be showing her how to make a strawberry cream pie next. She grabbed onto her arms, begging her to live here with them because her body can't handle everything if she's alone. This was the beginning of their life together. Tia thinks she's enjoyed the strawberry cream pie, so she asks him for more strawberries, but Hiraku thinks expanding even more right now would result in spoiled food. While they continued walking, Hiraku noticed Kuro's new puppies and decided to build a stable for them in the open field next to their farm. After he was done, he noticed all of Zabuton's children casting their silk to fly away. At the same time, Tia told him that she's also going to be leaving for a while, and started flying away on her wings. A few days later, Tia came back and brought even more girls to add to the harem. They're high elves, because they have giant plots, and all of them introduce themselves. They're also all related, so incest is going to prevail in this plot. Hiraku wonders why there aren't any guy elves, but Tia reveals the sad reality they've had to endure. During the last Great War, their entire male population was destroyed, and they've been roaming the woods until now. Their only wish is to repopulate now, and beg Hiraku to help them out. With the village's population increasing, Hiraku began building them a house for all of them to live together. Their skills in construction and woodworking allowed them to build the house within just 10 days, and they thought it's much nicer than Hiraku's dirt shack. However, at the very least, he wishes that
we've got a wild ride ahead, and I want you right there with us. So, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and let's continue this epic journey together. Can't wait to see you in the next episode. Until then, stay curious, stay awesome, and I'll catch you on the flip side.